The Justice League Watchtower had witnessed countless threats, alien armadas, dimensional incursions, and gods bent on conquest. But nothing prepared them for the moment reality itself screamed in agony. The observation deck's reinforced viewing ports, designed to withstand the vacuum of space and omega beam strikes, spiderwebbed with cracks as emerald lightning tore through the fabric of existence. Alarms shrieked, systems failed, and through the breach came something that made even the gods among men reach for their weapons. A figure wreathed in green flame and barely contained fury crashed through the dimensional wound like a meteor wrapped in malice. He was massive, easily matching Superman's height, but broader, more primal. Wild black hair defied gravity around a face locked in permanent rage. Golden eyes burned with an intensity that had nothing to do with heat vision and everything to do with violence made manifest. The aura surrounding him pulsed like a living thing, crackling with energy that made the Watchtower's advanced sensors scream warnings in languages its Kryptonian and Thanagarian designers had never programmed. "All hands to battle stations." Batman's voice cut through the chaos with surgical precision. "Unknown hostile. Power level unprecedented." In the command center, the Trinity converged with the practiced efficiency of gods who'd fought side by side through apocalypses. Superman's cape billowed as he accelerated to subsonic speed within the station's corridors, his Kryptonian biology already cataloging the intruder's threat level. Wonder Woman drew her god-killer sword with the fluid grace of 3,000 years of warrior tradition, her Amazon instincts recognizing a berserker when she saw one. Batman's fingers danced across holographic displays, pulling up energy readings that made no sense, power signatures that kept climbing, adapting, evolving with each passing second. "That's not possible," Cyborg said from his integration port, Motherbox technology interfacing directly with the Watchtower's systems. His energy output just increased 30% in the last 10 seconds. It's still rising. The flash vibrated into the command center in a blur of red lightning, his connection to the Speed Force giving him a unique perspective on the temporal distortions surrounding our visitor. "Guys, whatever that is, it's radiating temporal displacement. He's not from our universe, not even from our multiverse." Broly stood in the observation deck's wreckage, chest heaving, fists clenched so tight that blood seeped between his fingers. The last thing he remembered was fighting, always fighting, against Goku and Vegeta on some frozen wasteland. Then that damned instant transmission, his own explosive power surge, reality shattering like glass. Now he was somewhere else, somewhere with strange metal walls and artificial gravity, and the distinct sensation of being watched by predators who thought themselves his equal. His ki flared instinctively, a defense mechanism honed through decades of exile and survival. The golden aura brightened to blinding intensity, and the Watchtower shuddered. In the command center, warning klaxons reached a pitched fever. "He's powering up," Superman said, his voice tight. "I can feel it from here. That energy." "It is unlike anything in our database," Batman finished. "Not Kryptonian, not new god, not any form of energy we've cataloged. It's biological, but also metaphysical. It's responding to his emotional state. Then we need to calm him down before he tears the station apart, or before he realizes we're in orbit and sends us plummeting into the Atlantic." Superman held up a hand. "Let me try first. If he's scared and confused—" "That's not fear, Clark," Batman interrupted, his detective's eye reading body language even through surveillance feeds. "That's rage, pure, distilled, and barely controlled." But Superman was already gone, moving at speeds that turned him into a red and blue streak. He believed in giving everyone a chance. Even monsters could be redeemed. He'd proven that with Bizarro, with reformed villains, with countless others. As he approached the observation deck, he consciously dampened his speed, making himself visible and non-threatening. He floated through the breached doorway with his hands raised, his cape settling around him like a crimson flag of peace. "Easy," Superman said, his voice carrying that perfect balance of authority and compassion that had calmed everything from scared children to rampaging doomsday clones. Broly's head snapped toward the sound, and those burning golden eyes locked onto Superman with an intensity that actually made the Man of Steel's instincts scream danger. For a moment, neither moved, two beings of godlike power, each measuring each other across 10 feet of debris-strewn deck. Then Broly spoke, his voice a guttural growl that seemed to originate from somewhere deeper than his chest. Kakarot. Superman's enhanced hearing caught the word perfectly, but his universal translator struggled with the context. I don't know who that is. My name is Kakarot. The roar shattered the remaining viewport glass. Broly's aura exploded outward like a supernova, the observation deck buckling under the pressure. And then he moved, faster than Superman expected, faster than someone that large should be able to move, with a haymaker that carried enough force to shatter planets. Superman crossed his arms and took the hit. The impact sent him rocketing backward through 3 bulkheads, his invulnerable body carving a tunnel through reinforced Thanagarian metal like it was tissue paper. He caught himself in the medical bay, boots skidding across the floor, leaving furrows in the deck plating. Okay, Superman said, wiping a trickle of blood from his lip, the first time he'd bled from a punch in months. In the command center, Batman was already coordinating. Diana, seal the eastern corridors. Hal, John, you're with me. We're initiating Protocol Omega-7. Wonder Woman was already moving, her lasso of truth uncoiling like a golden serpent. Green Lantern Hal Jordan and John Stewart materialized their power rings, emerald constructs forming around them like verdant armor. Martian Mantelian phased through the ceiling, his Martian shapeshifting allowing him to become intangible as he approached the combat zone. Broly tore through the Watchtower like a force of nature given flesh and fury. Each step cracked the deck plating, each breath released visible waves of energy that made the artificial atmosphere shimmer. He could sense them now, all these powerful beings converging on his location. Good. Let them all come. Let them all come. The rage that defined his existence demanded release, and this strange place with its strange warriors would serve perfectly. Superman emerged from the medical bay corridor at full speed, this time not holding back. He hit Broly with a flying tackle that would have sent an ordinary opponent into low Earth orbit. Instead, Broly caught him mid-flight, fingers digging into the Kryptonian's shoulders with enough force to actually make Superman grit his teeth. They spun through the air, a whirlwind of red cape and green aura, slamming into walls and ceiling and floor with impacts that registered on seismographs in Metropolis. "Stand down," Superman commanded, trying to break the grip. Broly's response was a headbutt that made Superman see stars, followed by a knee strike that doubled him over. As the Man of Steel gasped for breath, something he rarely needed to do, Broly grabbed him by the cape and hurled him like a javelin toward the command center. Wonder Woman intercepted, her bracers raised in an X-guard that caught Superman's trajectory and redirected him safely aside. She landed between Broly and the command center, sword drawn, every inch a warrior princess. "I am Diana, Princess of Themyscira. Stand down, warrior, or face the judgment of—" Broly blurred forward. Diana's sword came up in a defensive arc, honed through 3 millennia of combat against gods and monsters. The blade met Broly's forearm and stopped, not because it lacked sharpness or enchanted metal, but because the energy surrounding Broly's body had condensed into something harder than enchanted metal. Diana's eyes widened fractionally, warrior instinct recognizing the truth. This opponent's power is still growing. She adjusted instantly, warrior pragmatism overriding surprise. If the sword wouldn't cut, the pommel would bludgeon. She spun the weapon, driving the hilt toward Broly's temple with Olympian strength. He caught her wrist. She drove her other fist toward his ribs. He caught that too. They stood locked together, strength against strength, Amazon against Saiyan. "You fight well," Diana said through gritted teeth, "but rage without purpose is—" Broly's forehead smashed into hers, an ancient and brutal technique that transcended universes. Diana stumbled back, stars dancing in her vision, and Broly's ki blast took her in the chest, a sphere of emerald energy that detonated like a tactical nuke. The explosion sent her crashing through the wall into the hydroponics bay, where Martian vegetation burned under the unfamiliar energy. "Diana!" Superman was back, anger edging into his voice for the first time. His heat vision lanced out, twin beams of concentrated solar energy that could melt through vault doors and apocalyptian armor. Broly didn't dodge. He walked through the beams, his aura absorbing and dispersing the energy, emerald flames growing brighter with each step. Green Lantern constructs materialized, emerald chains wrapping around Broly's limbs, ankles, waist, and neck. Hal Jordan and John Stewart poured willpower into the constructs, their rings blazing with determination forged through years of cosmic police work. "Got him," Hal grunted, "for now. But whatever this guy is, he's stronger than—" The chain shattered, not broken, not strained, shattered like glass sculptures struck by hammers. Broly's aura pulsed once, and the Green Lantern constructs dissolved into motes of emerald light. Both lanterns staggered, feeling the psychic feedback through their rings. "Impossible," John Stewart breathed. "That took enough willpower to restrain a star." Martian Manhunter phased through the ceiling behind Broly, his Martian telepathy already reaching out to touch the intruder's mind. If they couldn't contain him physically, perhaps they could reach him psychologically, calm the storm of... John's telepathy touched Broly's consciousness and recoiled like fingers touching molten steel. The Martian's eyes went wide with something he rarely experienced: fear. He'd touched the minds of Darkseid's minions, felt the cold, calculating evil of Brainiac, and sensed the chaotic madness of the Joker. But this was rage so primal, so absolute, that it had no beginning and no end. It was identity and existence and purpose, all fused into a single screaming need to destroy. "Clark!" John's voice was shaken as he solidified, placing himself between Broly and the others. "His mind, it's an inferno. There's barely anything else, just rage and pain and—" Broly's fist caught the Martian Manhunter in the solar plexus before he could finish. John, one of the most powerful beings in the DC universe, folded around the blow and went down hard. Batman's voice cut through the chaos with characteristic calm. "Protocol Omega-7 initiated. Red Sun generators activating in 30 seconds. Everyone, clear the observation deck." Superman understood immediately. The Red Sun generators, technology salvaged from his Fortress of Solitude and integrated into the Watchtower for containment scenarios. They would bathe the area in red solar radiation, temporarily depowering Superman, but also potentially weakening any solar-based energy. It was a last resort because it meant Superman would be fighting at human levels while this berserker maintained his fury. "No," Superman said firmly, "not yet. If his power is biological and not solar-based, it won't work. We need to understand what we're dealing with first." In the command center, Batman's fingers paused over the activation sequence. He hated it when Superman was right about mercy. "Then what do you suggest?" "I talked to him," Superman said, landing heavily in front of Broly. His costume was torn, and blood was at the corner of his mouth, but his expression remained determined. "He called me Kakarot. That's someone specific, someone he knows, maybe someone who looks like me." Broly stood amidst the wreckage of the observation deck, surrounded by downed heroes, breathing heavily, but clearly not tired. His golden eyes focused on Superman with that same intensity, that same recognition mixed with hatred. "You are not him," Broly growled, his voice slightly more controlled now. "You smell different, feel different, but you wear his face." "I don't know who Kakarot is," Superman said honestly, lowering his guard, making himself vulnerable. "But I'm guessing he's someone who hurt you, someone you've been fighting for a long time." Something flickered in those golden eyes,
Not softness, never that, but perhaps the barest hint of recognition that this conversation was different from combat. I am Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan, and I destroy everything. You don't have to, Superman replied simply. I've met warriors like you before, people with incredible power and trauma they can't escape. You're in a different universe now, Broly. Different rules, different chances. For a moment, the green aura flickered, dimming slightly. Broly's fists unclenched fractionally. Around them, the Justice League held position but didn't advance, recognizing the delicate moment unfolding. Then alarms shrieked again, different ones coming from the deep space sensors. On every screen in the command center, the same image appeared, a massive boom tube opening in high orbit, apocalyptic technology scarring reality as something vast and terrible began to emerge. No, Batman said flatly. Cyborg's hands flew across his interfaces. It's him, Darkseid. He's coming through personally with a full parademon assault force. Superman's jaw tightened. Darkseid, the Lord of Apocalypse, had chosen this exact moment to attack, and the Watchtower was already damaged. Half the League was down, and they had an uncontrollable berserker in their midst who... Broly's head turned toward the boom tube, sensing the new power signature emerging. His lips curled into something that might have been a smile on someone less feral. More fighting, he said simply, and for the first time since arriving, his aura stabilized, focusing into something more controlled. Not tamed, never tamed, but directed. Good. Superman decided in that instant, the kind of impossible choice that defined his heroism. He extended a hand toward Broly, cape billowing dramatically behind him in the artificial atmosphere. Then fight with us, Superman said. Just this once, then we'll figure out how to get you home. Broly looked at the offered hand for a long moment. Then, without taking it, he turned toward the boom tube and cracked his knuckles. I fight alone, he said, but I fight. As parademon swarms began pouring through the rift in reality, and Darkseid's Omega beams painted the void with crimson death, the Justice League prepared for a battle unlike any they'd faced. Not just against the Lord of Apocalypse, but underside a warrior whose power grew with every moment of combat, and whose rage had no ceiling. In the command center, Batman pulled up contingency plans that had never been designed for a scenario this chaotic. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. Wonder Woman pulled herself from the hydroponics wreckage, sword in hand, a fierce smile crossing her face. Well then, let's show this Saiyan how gods fight. The Watchtower's emergency bulkhead sealed, the Justice League rallied, and Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan, prepared to introduce Darkseid to a level of violence even Apocalypse had never imagined.
The boom tube's event horizon pulsed like a wound in space-time, vomiting forth the armies of Apocalypse with mechanical precision. Parademons, thousands of them, shrieked through the void in formation, their cybernetic wings catching starlight as they descended on the Watchtower like locusts on a harvest. Behind them came the Furies, Lashina with her electrified whips, Mad Harriet with her poison claws, Stompa, whose footfalls could shatter continents. And finally, stepping through the dimensional gateway with the casual confidence of a god who'd never known defeat, came Darkseid himself. He was massive, 8 feet of new god physiology wrapped in stone-gray skin and dark armor that seemed to absorb light. His eyes glowed with Omega energy, twin furnaces of absolute destruction. The universe bent slightly around him, reality itself acknowledging the presence of something fundamentally wrong with existence. Justice League. Darkseid's voice rolled across the vacuum like thunder, transmitted through technology and will alone. Your resistance to the anti-life equation ends today. I will strip your free will from you atom by atom, and you will kneel." Superman flew to the breached observation deck, cape streaming behind him, positioning himself between the Watchtower and the approaching horde. Wonder Woman materialized at his right, sword blazing with divine light. Green Lantern's Hal Jordan and John Stewart formed up on his left, their rings creating a massive energy barrier. The Flash vibrated into position, his Speed Force connection crackling like bottled lightning. Martian Manhunter phased through the hull, his Martian density shifting making him impossible to target. Cyborg's arm cannon is charged with Motherbox energy, the ultimate irony, using new god technology against new gods. And Broly simply walked through the wreckage to stand at Superman's left shoulder, his golden eyes fixed on Darkseid with an interest that went beyond rage into something almost analytical. Here was power, real power, not the pathetic fighters from his universe who always needed teamwork or fusion or divine intervention. This gray-skinned titan radiated threat like a sun radiates heat. "Interesting," Darkseid said, his burning gaze settling on Broly. "An unknown variable. Your power signature is alien, not of this reality. A refugee from the dying multiverse, perhaps, or something more useful." Broly's response was to raise one hand, palm open, ki condensing into a sphere of emerald energy that made the Watchtower's sensors scream. He didn't speak, didn't posture, simply demonstrated. Darkseid smiled, a terrible expression on that stone face. "I will break you slowly, stranger, and when you beg for death, I will instead give you purpose. You will become my finest hound." "Big words," Broly growled. "Let's see if you can back them up." The parademon swarm hit them like a tidal wave of chittering metal and corrupted flesh. Superman flew into the mass with haymakers that sent parademons spinning into the void, each punch calculated to disable without killing, a distinction that was becoming harder to maintain as their numbers grew. His heat vision swept across formation wings, cutting through cybernetics and cauterizing wounds simultaneously. Wonder Woman's sword sang through the vacuum, each swing a masterpiece of Amazonian combat technique. Where Superman hesitated to kill, Diana held no such compunctions. These were foot soldiers of tyranny, consciousnesses long since destroyed by Darkseid's technology. Her lasso whipped out to catch a parademon lieutenant, the golden rope of truth burning through the anti-life corruption like acid through flesh. "For Themyscira!" her battle cry echoed through the comms. The Green Lanterns created constructs limited only by imagination and willpower, immense Gatling guns, giant fly swatters, even a massive baseball bat that John Stewart swung with grim satisfaction. "Hal, left flank! On it!" Hal Jordan generated fighter jet constructs, dogfighting with parademons through the debris field. His cocky grin was audible through the comms. "Just like the Air Force, except with more aliens and less paperwork." The Flash became a red tornado, circling the Watchtower at speeds that turned him into a defensive barrier. Parademons that got too close found themselves vibrating at molecular frequencies that tore their cybernetics apart. "Guys, I can keep this up for maybe another hour before I need to—" A dozen parademons dove through a gap in his rotation. "Okay, 45 minutes." Martian Manhunter phased through the swarm like a ghost, his telepathy disrupting parademon hind-mind coordination. Those who tried to shoot him found their weapons passing through intangible Martian flesh. Those he touched solidly for suddenly found their minds wiped of combat directives, spinning confused in zero-G until Superman could push them away from the battle. Cyborg's arm cannon is charged with Motherbox energy, the ultimate irony, using new god technology against new gods. And Broly simply walked through the wreckage to stand at Superman's left shoulder, his golden eyes fixed on Darkseid with an interest that went beyond rage into something almost analytical. Here was power,
real power, not the pathetic fighters from his universe who always needed teamwork or fusion or divine intervention. This gray-skinned titan radiated threat like a sun radiates heat. "Interesting," Darkseid said, his burning gaze settling on Broly. "An unknown variable. Your power signature is alien, not of this reality. A refugee from the dying multiverse, perhaps, or something more useful." Broly's response was to raise one hand, palm open, ki condensing into a sphere of emerald energy that made the Watchtower's sensors scream. He didn't speak, didn't posture, simply demonstrated. Darkseid smiled, a terrible expression on that stone face. "I will break you slowly, stranger, and when you beg for death, I will instead give you purpose. You will become my finest hound." "Big words," Broly growled. "Let's see if you can back them up." The parademon swarm hit them like a tidal wave of chittering metal and corrupted flesh. Superman flew into the mass with haymakers that sent parademons spinning into the void, each punch calculated to disable without killing, a distinction that was becoming harder to maintain as their numbers grew. His heat vision swept across formation wings, cutting through cybernetics and cauterizing wounds simultaneously. Wonder Woman's sword sang through the vacuum, each swing a masterpiece of Amazonian combat technique. Where Superman hesitated to kill, Diana held no such compunctions. These were foot soldiers of tyranny, consciousnesses long since destroyed by Darkseid's technology. Her lasso whipped out to catch a parademon lieutenant, the golden rope of truth burning through the anti-life corruption like acid through flesh. "For Themyscira!" her battle cry echoed through the comms. The Green Lanterns created constructs limited only by imagination and willpower, immense Gatling guns, giant fly swatters, even a massive baseball bat that Jon Stewart swung with grim satisfaction. "Hal, left flank! On it!" Hal Jordan generated fighter jet constructs, dogfighting with parademons through the debris field. His cocky grin was audible through the comms. "Just like the Air Force, except with more aliens and less paperwork." The Flash became a red tornado, circling the Watchtower at speeds that turned him into a defensive barrier. Parademons that got too close found themselves vibrating at molecular frequencies that tore their cybernetics apart. "Guys, I can keep this up for maybe another hour before I need to—" A dozen parademons dove through a gap in his rotation. "Okay, 45 minutes." Martian Manhunter phased through the swarm like a ghost, his telepathy disrupting parademon hind-mind coordination. Those who tried to shoot him found their weapons passing through intangible Martian flesh. Those he touched solidly for suddenly found their minds wiped of combat directives, spinning confused in zero-G until Superman could push them away from the battle. Cyborg's arm cannon is charged with Motherbox energy, the ultimate irony, using new god technology against new gods. And Broly simply walked through the wreckage to stand at Superman's left shoulder, his golden eyes fixed on Darkseid with an interest that went beyond rage into something almost analytical. Here was power. Real power, not the pathetic fighters from his universe who always needed teamwork or fusion or divine intervention. This gray-skinned titan radiated threat like a sun radiates heat. "Interesting," Darkseid said, his burning gaze settling on Broly. "An unknown variable. Your power signature is alien, not of this reality. A refugee from the dying multiverse, perhaps, or something more useful." Broly's response was to raise one hand, palm open, ki condensing into a sphere of emerald energy that made the Watchtower's sensors scream. He didn't speak, didn't posture, simply demonstrated. Darkseid smiled, a terrible expression on that stone face. "I will break you slowly, stranger, and when you beg for death, I will instead give you purpose. You will become my finest hound." "Big words," Broly growled.
Darkseid's stone face remained impassive as he held Superman and Wonder Woman at bay with casual strength. Your precious sanctuary falls, Justice League, as all things fall before Darkseid. Your hope is my amusement, your struggle is my entertainment, and when I am finished, you will thank me for the mercy of anti-life. Superman's eyes blazed with heat vision, point-blank range, enough intensity to melt through apocalyptic armor. Darkseid's head rocked back slightly, an acknowledgement of annoyance, nothing more. His hand tightened around Superman's fist, and bones that had never broken began to creak under pressure that exceeded even Kryptonian durability. Wonder Woman's sword swept toward Darkseid's throat, divine enchantment seeking the jugular that even new gods needed. Darkseid's other hand came up, catching the blade between thumb and forefinger. He twisted. The sword, forged by Hephaestus, blessed by Zeus, shattered. Diana's eyes widened in genuine shock. That sword had cut through gods, demons, and cosmic entities. It wasn't supposed to break. Impossible, she breathed. No, Darkseid corrected. Inevitable. He headbutted Superman with enough force to send the Man of Steel spinning away, trailing blood in a vacuum. Wonder Woman tried to retreat, but Darkseid's grip shifted to her wrist, and he hurled her like a javelin toward the Green Lanterns. She collided with their construct barrier, and all three went tumbling through the debris field. Darkseid stood alone amidst the chaos, master of all he surveyed, and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The Justice League was broken, their sanctuary was falling, and soon a hand grabbed his shoulder. Darkseid turned, surprise flickering across his stone features for the first time in centuries. Broly stood there, floating in a vacuum without a suit or support, his emerald aura supporting all the life a Saiyan needed. His golden eyes met Darkseid's burning red gaze, and something passed between them, a recognition that transcended species or universe. Two apex predators, each measuring the other's capacity for violence. "My turn," Broly said simply. His fist drove into Darkseid's stomach with force that created a visible shockwave, space itself rippling from the impact. Darkseid, who had tanked planetary destruction, who had walked through supernova detonations, actually grunted. Pain. Real pain. How long had it been since he'd felt pain? Broly's other hand came up in an uppercut that snapped Darkseid's head back, then a knee strike that doubled the new god over, then an elbow that sent him rocketing away through his own parademon swarm. Parademons vaporized on contact with Darkseid's tumbling form, their cybernetics unable to withstand the kinetic energy of a propelled god. Darkseid caught himself against a chunk of Watchtower debris, his armor cracked, dark ichor seeping from his split lip. He touched the blood with one finger, examining it with something approaching wonder. Then he began to laugh, a sound like continents grinding together. "Yes," Darkseid said, his voice carrying genuine pleasure. "Yes, you are magnificent, raw power untempered by morality or mercy. You are what Superman could be if he embraced his true nature. What I will make you once I break you." His eyes blazed, and omega beams lanced out, reality-warping energy that could erase beings from existence itself, that could travel through time and space to hunt targets across dimensions. They struck Broly dead center. For a moment, the emerald aura flickered, then it intensified. Broly walked through the omega beams like they were spotlights instead of apocalypse weapons. His muscles bulged further, veins standing out like cables beneath his skin. His power was growing again, feeding on the challenge, adapting to new god energy. "Is that all?" Broly growled. His hands came together, ki condensing between his palms into a sphere that made the previous blasts look like firecrackers. "Then try this, eraser cannon." The emerald beam that erupted from his hands was wider than a boom tube, brighter than a sun going supernova. It crossed the distance to Darkseid in a microsecond, and the Lord of Apocalypse actually had to teleport to avoid it. The beam continued past where he'd been standing, past the parademon swarm, past the moon, out into deep space where it would travel for light years before dissipating. Superman pulled himself from the debris, vision clearing, and watched in awe and horror. Darkseid actually dodged. I've never seen Darkseid dodge. Batman's voice came through the comms, uncharacteristically shaken. Power output from that blast was equivalent to a supernova. If he can do that casually, if he keeps growing stronger, then we need to make sure he stays on our side, Wonder Woman finished, retrieving the broken pieces of her sword with a grim expression. Or at least, not against us. Darkseid reappeared via boom tube behind Broly, but the Saiyan's combat instincts were honed through lifetimes of battle. He spun, catching Darkseid's punch and returning it with compound interest. They traded blows that registered on seismographs on Earth, two titans of infinite malice and power. Each impact created shockwaves that scattered parademons like leaves. The Watchtower shook with sympathetic vibrations, more hull plates tearing free. The Furies regrouped, recognizing that the stranger was actually hurting their master. Lashin's whips wrapped around Broly's ankle. Stompa's gravity well pulled him off balance. Mad Harriet dove for his eyes with poisoned claws. Broly's aura exploded outward in all directions simultaneously, a technique of pure brute force with no finesse whatsoever. The Furies were blown away like dolls in a hurricane. Lashin's whips vaporized, Stompa's gravitational anchor shattered. Harriet's claws snapped against energy that was denser than any material. Insignificant, Broly dismissed them, his attention never leaving Darkseid. The new god's expression shifted from pleasure to calculation. This warrior was strong, stronger than anticipated, with growth potential that might actually be unlimited. Left unchecked, he could become a threat even to Apocalypse, but controlled, wielded properly. "You fight well, Saiyan," Darkseid said, adjusting his strategy, "but you fight without purpose. Join me. Together, we could conquer not just this universe, but all universes. Every reality would kneel before our combined might." Broly paused mid-charge, the offer cutting through his rage for a moment. Purpose. He'd never had a purpose beyond survival and revenge. What would it mean to have purpose? Superman saw the hesitation, and his heart sunk. "Broly, don't listen to him. Darkseid only offers slavery. I know what it's like to have power that scares you, that could destroy everything if you lost control for just a moment, but you don't need to become a weapon for someone else." "Superman is right," Wonder Woman added, floating closer despite her injuries. "You're a warrior. I recognize that. But a true warrior chooses their own battles. Darkseid would make you a tool, nothing more." Broly's golden eyes shifted between Superman and Darkseid, between the outstretched hand of hope and the clenched fist of tyranny. His power continued to grow, pressure building like a star approaching critical mass. The choice he made in this moment would reshape the balance of the DC universe. And in the command center, Batman pulled up files on something called the Phantom Zone and began calculating whether they could contain a Saiyan if this went wrong.
The silence stretched across the vacuum like a held breath. Parademons hovered in holding patterns, awaiting orders. The Justice League floated amidst debris, weapons ready but not attacking. Darkseid stood with one massive hand extended, offering power and purpose. Superman remained opposite, cape torn and bloodied, but eyes still burning with that impossible hope. And between them, Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan whose choice would determine whether Earth faced one apocalypse or two. Broly looked at his own hands, watching the emerald energy dance across his knuckles like living flame. Power without limit, rage without end. He'd spent his entire existence as a weapon, first for his father Paragus, then as a mindless destroyer, always someone else's tool or someone else's fear. The gray-skinned god offered more of the same, just with better packaging. But the one who looked like Kakarot, the one called Superman, offered something he'd never considered before:
The choice to be neither weapon nor monster. I choose. Broly's voice was low, dangerous, and for a heartbeat, neither faction knew which way he would turn. Then his aura exploded with such intensity that it created a visible shockwave, and he blurred toward Darkseid with his fist cocked back. To fight whoever I want. The punch caught Darkseid across the jaw with enough force to send the new god tumbling through space. Broly pursued with the single-minded focus of a predator who'd found prey worthy of the hunt, each strike landing with megatonnage that would crack planets. Darkseid blocked, parried, and countered with Omega Beams and devastating haymakers, but for the first time in living memory, the Lord of Apocalypse was being pushed back. Superman exhaled in relief so profound it was almost prayer. He chose himself, not us, not Darkseid, himself. Which makes him unpredictable, Batman's voice crackled through the comms, and unpredictability is only useful if it trends in our favor. Right now, we have maybe 10 minutes before the Watchtower loses structural integrity completely. Wonder Woman retrieved her broken sword hilt, divine energy still crackling along the shattered edge. Then we end this in 9. League, converge on Darkseid while the Saiyan has him occupied. They moved as one, the practiced coordination of gods and heroes who'd fought together through countless crises. The Flash became a crimson tornado again, but this time he spiraled inward toward Darkseid, his Speed Force connection creating temporal distortions that slowed the new god's movements fractionally. Martian Manhunter phased through Darkseid's density, his telepathy hammering against Darkseid's mental shields with psychic force that would shatter normal minds. Green Lanterns Jordan and Stewart created a construct cage of pure willpower, emerald bars that compressed space itself. Cyborg's boom tubes opened and closed rapidly around Darkseid, each one attempting to teleport parts of the new god to different dimensions, a technique that would tear normal beings apart atom by atom. Darkseid's Omega energy disrupted most of the boom tubes, but enough got through to irritate, distract, to create openings. Superman hit from above, heat vision blazing, fists swinging in combinations that blended Kryptonian martial arts with Kansas farm boy brawling. Wonder Woman struck from below, her broken sword still finding gaps in Darkseid's armor because 3,000 years of combat training didn't become useless just because the blade was shorter. And Broly came from the side like a green comet, his ki blasts punctuating every exchange with devastating explosions. For 30 seconds, the combined might of the Justice League and a legendary Super Saiyan actually drove Darkseid back. The new god's stone face showed something that might have been concern or might have been recalculation. His eyes blazed with Omega energy, but not in beams this time. The energy expanded outward in a wave, a pulse of anti-life corruption that swept across the battlefield like a tsunami. It touched parademons and they got rigid, fully enslaved. It touched debris, and the metal began to rot. It touched the edge of the Watchtower, and systems started failing as the station's AI struggled against mental corruption. Superman felt it wash over him, whispers in a language older than Krypton, telling him that hope was meaningless, that struggle was futile, that free will was the ultimate lie. For a moment, his muscles locked. For a moment, he saw himself as Darkseid saw him, a naive child playing hero while the universe burned. Then he remembered Jonathan Kent teaching him to drive the tractor. Martha Kent bake apple pie on Sunday mornings. Lois Lane told him he was an idiot for revealing his identity, but she loved him anyway. Every small human moment that made him Clark Kent, not just Kal-El. The anti-life whispers shattered against those memories like waves against a breakwater. No, Superman said simply, his will reasserting itself through sheer Kansas stubbornness. I choose hope, always. Wonder Woman's warrior training gave her similar resistance, Amazonian mental discipline forged through millennia, divine heritage providing immunity to mere godlike corruption. The Flash's Speed Force connection vibrated him at frequencies that anti-life couldn't quite touch. Martian Manhunter's alien psychology processed the corruption differently, alien enough to resist. Green Lantern's willpower literally defined their existence. But Cyborg screamed. Half his body was Motherbox technology, new god science that recognized Darkseid's corruption like a virus recognizes a host cell. His human half fought, Victor Stone's consciousness battling against the anti-life equation, trying to rewrite his personality from the inside out. Vic! The flash was there in a microsecond, vibrating at frequencies that disrupted the anti-life signal's hold. Stay with us, man. Remember who you are. Father tried to save me, made me more than human. Cyborg's voice was fragmented, conflicted, but I'm still Victor Stone. I'm still... His human eye focused, resolute, cutting through corruption. I'm still a Titan. His arm cannon blazed with energy that was part technology, part will, part desperate humanity refusing to be overwritten. The blast caught Darkseid in the chest, and the new god actually staggered. Not from the power. Cyborg's weaponry was impressive, but not enough to truly hurt Darkseid, but from the surprise. A half-machine should have been the easiest to corrupt, yet this hybrid had resisted. Fascinating, Darkseid observed. The weakness of flesh strengthening the cold efficiency of technology. Inefficient, but surprisingly resilient.
3 days after the Watchtower fell, Broly stood in the ruins of what Superman called the Fortress of Solitude, a crystalline palace buried in Arctic ice that made the Saiyan deeply uncomfortable. Everything was too clean, too organized, too peaceful. The crystal architecture hummed with Kryptonian technology, displaying holographic records of a dead world that Superman spoke of with reverence and sorrow. Broly understood loss. His planet Vampa had been a hellscape, but he didn't understand mourning. Superman moved through the fortress with the easy familiarity of someone visiting a childhood home, his cape trailing across crystal floors as he accessed databases and planetary archives. "We're trying to understand your physiology," he explained, holographic Kryptonian text scrolling past too fast for normal eyes. "If we can figure out how your power works, maybe we can help you control it better." "I don't want control," Broly said flatly, watching his reflection in the crystalline walls, golden eyes, permanent scowl, barely contained violence. "Control is what Paragus wanted. My father put that control collar on me, tried to make me a weapon he could aim. I broke it, and I broke him." Superman's expression tightened. "I understand wanting freedom from control, but power without any restraint just becomes destruction. You proved you could choose who to fight when you rejected Darkseid. That's a kind of control, choosing your battles." Before Broly could respond, the fortress's alert systems blazed crimson. Batman's voice cut through the Arctic silence. "Clark, we have a situation. Metropolis, Lex Luthor just walked into LexCorp Tower with a guest, an alien claiming to be from Broly's universe." Superman's jaw tightened. "On my way. Broly, stay here." "No." Broly was already moving toward the exit, his aura flickering to life. "Someone from my universe? I want to see who." "It could be a trap," Superman warned, but he was already flying, ice crystals scattering in his wake. Broly launched after him, the two of them cutting contrails through Arctic sky toward Metropolis's gleaming spires. LexCorp Tower dominated Metropolis's skyline like a chrome dagger pointed at heaven, 40 stories of advanced technology and corporate ambition. In the penthouse office, Lex Luthor stood with his hands clasped behind his back, studying his guest with the analytical precision that had made him Earth's most dangerous mind. The guest was humanoid, but clearly alien. Purple skin, white hair, gold and purple armor that radiated menace. His posture was royal, arrogant, the bearing of someone who'd never known defeat. When he spoke, his voice carried the casual cruelty of absolute power. "So this is Earth," Frieza said, examining his reflection in LexCorp's floor-to-ceiling windows. "How quaint, how primitive. And yet, according to my scouts, my dear monkey Broly ended up somewhere in this sector after that unfortunate dimensional accident." Lex smiled, the predatory expression that had preceded the downfall of rivals and heroes alike. "The Saiyan. Yes, he's been quite the disruption. Arrived during a Justice League crisis, fought alongside Superman against Darkseid himself. Quite impressive for a mindless berserker." "Oh, Broly is far from mindless," Frieza purred, his tail swishing behind him with serpentine grace. "He's simply focused on destruction, on power, on fighting anything strong enough to be worth killing. It's what makes Saiyans such useful pawns. Point them at your enemies and watch them destroy everything." "And you want him back?" Lex asked, already calculating how this alien warlord could be useful. "Want him back? Heavens no," Frieza laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "I want him dead. You see, Mr. Luther, Saiyans are meant to be extinct. I made certain of that when I destroyed planet Vegeta, but a few stragglers survived: Goku, Vegeta, and apparently Broly. Can't have loose ends running around different universes, can we? It sets a poor precedent." Lex's smile widened. Here was someone who understood the necessity of eliminating threats before they became uncontrollable, someone who saw Superman-level beings not as heroes, but dangers requiring termination. "I appreciate your philosophy, Lord Frieza, and I believe we can help each other. You want the Saiyan dead, I want Superman humbled. Broly seems to respect Superman, even trust him. If we shatter that trust, the monkey goes berserk and destroys everything, including your Kryptonian problem." Frieza finished the thought with obvious relish. "Elegant. I like you, Mr. Luther. You think like a proper tyrant. I prefer pragmatic humanitarian, but I'll accept the compliment." Lex gestured to the windows. "They'll be here soon. Superman's hearing is quite extraordinary. He probably picked up our conversation from miles away." "Good," Frieza said, his power beginning to manifest, a white and purple aura that made LexCorp's technology flicker and fail. Superman crashed through LexCorp's reinforced windows at Mach 3, Broly half a second behind him. Glass and steel exploded inward as the two warriors landed in Lex's office, battle-ready and tense. Superman's eyes immediately found Lex, then shifted to the alien standing beside him, an alien whose power signature made even Kryptonian senses recoil. But it was Broly's reaction that made Superman's blood run cold. The Saiyan went absolutely rigid, his entire body locking up like a prey animal recognizing an apex predator. His golden eyes went wide, not with rage, but with something Superman had never seen in Broly before: fear. "Frieza," Broly whispered, the name carrying decades of trauma and programming. "Hello, monkey," Frieza said pleasantly. "Miss me?" Broly's aura exploded involuntarily, emerald energy flooding LexCorp's penthouse with such intensity that the walls began to melt. His power was spiking out of control, climbing toward the levels he'd reached against Darkseid. But there was something different, something desperate and uncontrolled about it. Superman stepped between them instinctively, his cape spreading like a shield. "Who is this Broly?" "Frieza," Broly managed through clenched teeth, his whole body trembling. "Emperor of Universe 7, destroyer of planets. My father worked for him, sent me on missions to kill entire civilizations for him. I was his weapon, his attack dog." "Was?" Frieza tilted his head mockingly. "My dear Broly, you'll always be my weapon. Saiyans don't get to retire from service. They serve until I decide they're no longer useful. Then they die. Your father understood that. Paragus was quite the loyal servant until the end." Something snapped in Broly's eyes. "You killed my father?" "Me? Goodness no. I simply didn't stop someone else from doing it. What's the phrase you primitives use? Not my circus, not my monkeys. Although you were literally my monkey, so perhaps the metaphor breaks down." Broly's scream was wordless, primal, the sound of every restraint shattering simultaneously. His aura went from emerald to blinding white-green, his muscles bulging beyond even his previous limits. This wasn't the focused warrior who'd fought Darkseid. This was the legendary berserker from his universe's darkest tales. Power without thought, rage without purpose, destruction incarnate. He blurred toward Frieza with killing intent so pure that it was almost tangible. Superman intercepted, grabbing Broly mid-charge with all his Kryptonian strength. Wait, don't let him manipulate you. That's what he wants. Broly's fist caught Superman in the ribs almost casually, the blow carrying enough force to send the Man of Steel crashing through 3 walls into the LexCorp research division. Lab equipment exploded, scientists scattered, and Superman lay in the wreckage, tasting blood, ribs cracked despite Kryptonian durability. "Clark!" The Justice League comm system erupted with voices, Batman coordinating, Wonder Woman en route, Flash already moving. But Broly had already turned back to Frieza, his golden eyes locked on the alien emperor with single-minded focus. Frieza smiled indulgently, making no move to defend himself as Broly charged again.
3 days after the Watchtower fell, Broly stood in the ruins of what Superman called the Fortress of Solitude, a crystalline palace buried in Arctic ice that made the Saiyan deeply uncomfortable. Everything was too clean, too organized, too peaceful. The crystal architecture hummed with Kryptonian technology, displaying holographic records of a dead world that Superman spoke of with reverence and sorrow. Broly understood loss. His planet Vampa had been a hellscape, but he didn't understand mourning. Superman moved through the fortress with the easy familiarity of someone visiting a childhood home, his cape trailing across crystal floors as he accessed databases and planetary archives. "We're trying to understand your physiology," he explained, holographic Kryptonian text scrolling past too fast for normal eyes. "If we can figure out how your power works, maybe we can help you control it better." "I don't want control," Broly said flatly, watching his reflection in the crystalline walls, golden eyes, permanent scowl, barely contained violence. "Control is what Paragus wanted. My father put that control collar on me, tried to make me a weapon he could aim. I broke it, and I broke him." Superman's expression tightened. "I understand wanting freedom from control, but power without any restraint just becomes destruction. You proved you could choose who to fight when you rejected Darkseid. That's a kind of control, choosing your battles." Before Broly could respond, the fortress's alert systems blazed crimson. Batman's voice cut through the Arctic silence. "Clark, we have a situation. Metropolis. Lex Luthor just walked into LexCorp Tower with a guest, an alien claiming to be from Broly's universe." Superman's jaw tightened. "On my way. Broly, stay here." "No." Broly was already moving toward the exit, his aura flickering to life. "Someone from my universe? I want to see who." "It could be a trap," Superman warned, but he was already flying, ice crystals scattering in his wake. Broly launched after him, the two of them cutting contrails through Arctic sky toward Metropolis's gleaming spires. LexCorp Tower dominated Metropolis's skyline like a chrome dagger pointed at heaven, 40 stories of advanced technology and corporate ambition. In the penthouse office, Lex Luthor stood with his hands clasped behind his back, studying his guest with the analytical precision that had made Earth's most dangerous mind. The guest was humanoid but clearly alien, purple skin, white hair, gold and purple armor that radiated menace. His posture was royal, arrogant, the bearing of someone who'd never known defeat. When he spoke, his voice carried the casual cruelty of absolute power. "So, this is Earth," Frieza said, examining his reflection in LexCorp's floor-to-ceiling windows. "How quaint, how primitive. And yet, according to my scouts, my dear monkey Broly ended up somewhere in this sector after that unfortunate dimensional accident." Lex smiled, the predatory expression that had preceded the downfall of rivals and heroes alike. "The Saiyan, yes, he's been quite the disruption. Arrived during a Justice League crisis, fought alongside Superman against Darkseid himself. Quite impressive for a mindless berserker.
"Oh, Broly is far from mindless," Frieza purred, his tail swishing behind him with serpentine grace. "He's simply focused on destruction, on power, on fighting anything strong enough to be worth killing. It's what makes Saiyans such useful pawns. Point them at your enemies and watch them destroy everything." "And you want him back?" Lex asked, already calculating how this alien warlord could be useful. "Want him back? Heavens no," Frieza laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "I want him dead. You see, Mr. Luther, Saiyans are meant to be extinct. I made certain of that when I destroyed planet Vegeta. But a few stragglers survived. Goku, Vegeta, and apparently Broly. Can't have loose ends running around different universes, can we? It sets a poor precedent." Lex's smile widened. Here was someone who understood the necessity of eliminating threats before they became uncontrollable. Someone who saw Superman-level beings not as heroes, but dangers requiring termination. "I appreciate your philosophy, Lord Frieza, and I believe we can help each other. You want the Saiyan dead. I want Superman humbled. Broly seems to respect Superman, even trust him. If we shatter that trust, the monkey goes berserk and destroys everything, including your Kryptonian problem." Frieza finished the thought with obvious relish. "Elegant. I like you, Mr. Luther. You think like a proper tyrant. I prefer pragmatic humanitarian, but I'll accept the compliment." Gestured to the windows. "They'll be here soon. Superman's hearing is quite extraordinary. He probably picked up our conversation from miles away." "Good," Frieza said, his power beginning to manifest, a white and purple aura that made LexCorp's technology flicker and fail. Superman crashed through LexCorp's reinforced windows at Mach 3, Broly half a second behind him. Glass and steel exploded inward as the two warriors landed in Lex's office, battle-ready and tense. Superman's eyes immediately found Lex, then shifted to the alien standing beside him, an alien whose power signature made even Kryptonian senses recoil. But it was Broly's reaction that made Superman's blood run cold. The Saiyan went absolutely rigid, his entire body locking up like a prey animal recognizing an apex predator. His golden eyes went wide, not with rage, but with something Superman had never seen in Broly before. Fear. "Frieza," Broly whispered, the name carrying decades of trauma and programming. "Hello, monkey," Frieza said pleasantly. "Miss me?" Broly's aura exploded involuntarily, emerald energy flooding LexCorp's penthouse with such intensity that the walls began to melt. His power was spiking out of control, climbing toward the levels he'd reached against Darkseid. But there was something different, something desperate and uncontrolled about it. Superman stepped between them instinctively, his cape spreading like a shield. "Who is this, Broly?" "Frieza," Broly managed through clenched teeth, his whole body trembling. "Emperor of Universe 7, destroyer of planets. My father worked for him, sent me on missions to kill entire civilizations for him. I was his weapon, his attack dog." "Was?" Frieza tilted his head mockingly. "My dear Broly, you'll always be my weapon. Saiyans don't get to retire from service. They serve until I decide they're no longer useful. Then they die. Your father understood that. Paragus was quite a loyal servant until the end." Something snapped in Broly's eyes. "You killed my father?" "Me? Goodness no." Frieza examined his fingernails with exaggerated disinterest. "What's the phrase you primitives use? Not my circus, not my monkeys. Although you were literally my monkey, so perhaps the metaphor breaks down." Broly's scream was wordless, primal, the sound of every restraint shattering simultaneously. His aura went from emerald to blinding white-green, his muscles bulging beyond even his previous limits. This wasn't the focused warrior who'd fought Darkseid. This was the legendary berserker from his universe's darkest tales. Power without thought, rage without purpose, destruction incarnate. He blurred toward Frieza with killing intent, so pure it was almost tangible. Superman intercepted, grabbing Broly mid-charge with all his Kryptonian strength. "Wait, don't let him manipulate you. That's what he wants." Broly's fist caught Superman in the ribs almost casually, the blow carrying enough force to send the Man of Steel crashing through 3 walls and into LexCorp's research division. Lab equipment exploded, scientists scattered, and Superman lay in the wreckage, tasting blood, ribs cracked despite Kryptonian durability. "Clark!" The Justice League comm system erupted with voices, Batman coordinating, Wonder Woman en route, Flash already moving. But Broly had already turned back to Frieza, his golden eyes locked on the alien Emperor with single-minded focus. Frieza smiled indulgently, making
"Citizens of Earth," Frieza announced, his voice broadcasting across every screen in Metropolis. "Your pet Saiyan is a weapon of mass destruction. He destroyed worlds for me. Genocide was his specialty. And now you've given him sanctuary? How noble, how stupid. Allow me to demonstrate what he truly is." He teleported behind Broly as the Saiyan recovered midair and drove a fist into his spine with surgical precision. Broly screamed, power flaring wildly, lashing out in all directions. One blast carved through a skyscraper's support structure, another vaporized a city block. Superman rocketed from LexCorp's ruins, heat vision blazing, but Frieza simply swatted the beams aside like they were flashlight beams instead of concentrated solar energy. Now, Superman, this is between me and my property. Though I must say, I admire your aesthetic. The cape is a nice touch, very authoritarian." Wonder Woman arrived in a blur of divine speed, her reconstructed sword, hastily reforged by Hephaestus after the Darkseid battle, leading. She drove the blade toward Frieza's heart with 3,000 years of combat expertise. Frieza caught it between his fingers, then crushed the blade to powder with a casual squeeze. "Goodness, does everyone on this planet fight with swords? How delightfully primitive." His tail whipped out faster than Wonder Woman could track, catching her across the temple and sending her spinning toward the ground. The Flash caught her before impact, vibrating both of them through a building to dissipate momentum. "Guys, this thing is way beyond Darkseid's power level," Flash said through the comm. "I don't think we can win this fight." Batman's voice was grim. "Then we don't fight. We contain and evacuate. Get civilians clear. I'm deploying every countermeasure we have." But Broly wasn't thinking about tactics or evacuation or collateral damage. His vision had narrowed to a tunnel, and at the end of that tunnel was Frieza, the being who'd enslaved his father, who'd sent him to commit genocide, who represented everything Broly had been forced to be. Every ounce of his power, every bit of his rage, channeled into one purpose: kill Frieza or die trying. His aura intensified further, muscles bulging beyond what should be anatomically possible, hair standing straight up, bioelectricity arcing across his body like lightning made solid. This wasn't beyond Super Saiyan, beyond legendary Super Saiyan. This was evolution in real time, Saiyan biology adapting to meet an impossible threat. "Frieza!" The roar shattered windows across 3 city blocks.
Broly launched himself forward with enough force to create a sonic boom, fist cocked back for a strike that carried every ounce of his infinite rage. Frieza yawned. Then he drove his hand through Broly's chest. Not a killing blow. The hand stopped just short of the heart, hovering millimeters from ending the Saiyan's life, but close enough that Broly could feel his own heartbeat against Frieza's palm, close enough to send a message that was crystal clear. I could kill you any time I want. You see, Frieza said, his voice carrying across Metropolis for every camera to capture. This is your hero, Superman. This is the creature you chose to trust, a weapon I designed, a destroyer I aimed, and one I can still control whenever I choose. He's not a hero. He's not even a person. He's a tool that's outlived its usefulness. Frieza withdrew his hand, leaving Broly hovering in shock, blood seeping from the wound in his chest. The Saiyan's aura flickered, his power draining as shock and despair washed over him. For all his growth, all his rage, he was still nothing compared to Frieza, still the weak child who'd been collared and controlled. Superman flew up beside Broly, positioning himself between the Saiyan and the Emperor. His costume was torn, blood streaking from a dozen wounds, but his eyes still burned with that impossible hope. You're wrong. He's not a tool. He's a person who's been hurt and used and is trying to be better, and I won't let you take that from him. Frieza's golden aura pulsed with amusement. How touching. The pep talk. But words won't save. Broly's fist caught Frieza in the jaw. Not his strongest punch, not his most devastating blow, but delivered with perfect timing while Frieza was monologuing, while his guard was fractionally lowered. The Golden Emperor tumbled backward, surprise flickering across his face for the first time. You talk too much, Broly growled, his aura reigniting. Not the out-of-control berserker rage from before, but something more focused, more purposeful. I'm done being your weapon. I'm done being afraid of you. Frieza's smile returned, but colder now. Then die with dignity at least, better than living as this pathetic thing called a hero. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration of the impossible gulf between their power levels. Frieza moved with casual grace, each strike precise and devastating. Broly fought back with everything he had, power growing with each exchange, but it wasn't enough. Every time he adapted, Frieza adapted faster. Every time his power climbed, Frieza simply climbed higher. The Justice League tried to help. Superman's heat vision, Wonder Woman's combat mastery, Green Lantern constructions appearing as Hal and John arrived, Flash creating temporal distortions. Nothing touched Frieza. He was operating on a level beyond anything Earth had faced, beyond Darkseid, beyond Doomsday, beyond the Anti-Monitor himself. Metropolis burned around them, buildings collapsed, thousands died despite his evacuation efforts, and through it all, Broly kept fighting, kept standing, kept refusing to stay down, not because he thought he could win, but because Superman had called him strong, because someone had finally chosen to believe in him instead of fear him. Frieza's tail wrapped around Broly's throat, lifting the Saiyan like a rag doll. Any last words, monkey? Broly's blood-flecked lips curled into something that might have been a smile. Yeah, duck. Frieza's eyes widened as he sensed it, power signatures converging from across the planet. Not just the Justice League, but every hero Earth could muster. Green Lanterns forming an orbital bombardment formation, Shazam's lightning striking from storm clouds that hadn't existed seconds ago, Aquaman rising from Metropolis Harbor with a tidal wave shaped like a fist. Cyborg opens the boom tubes that deposited the entire Teen Titans in combat formation. And from the Arctic, traveling at light speed, came a beam of pure Kryptonian energy, the Fortress of Solitude's planetary defense cannon, aimed by Batman's remote access and fired by Alfred Pennyworth's surprisingly steady hand. The combined strike of Earth's heroes hit Frieza simultaneously, enough power to crack continents, delivered with precision timing that spoke to Batman's coordination and the League's trust. For 3 seconds, Frieza vanished into a maelstrom of destructive energy.
When the light cleared, he stood unmarked, his golden aura intact, but his smile had disappeared completely. "Ah," Frieza said coldly, "so the entire planet wants to play. How tiresome. Very well, I'll destroy Earth, then I'll destroy Broly, then I'll move on to the next universe and do it again. It's what I do best, after all." His power began to climb, not in stages, but in one continuous surge that made the previous displays look like warm-ups. The sky darkened, the ground cracked, reality itself seemed to groan under the weight of Frieza's true power unleashed. And Broly, broken and bleeding, forced himself to stand one more time, because someone had to, because Superman had believed in him, because for the first time in his life, he had something worth fighting for beyond just fighting itself.
The sky over Metropolis bled crimson and gold, reality warping under the pressure of Frieza's unleashed power. Buildings that had survived Doomsday, Darkseid, and countless alien invasions now crumbled like sandcastles before a tide. The very air screamed, molecules tearing apart under energy that transcended physics. Citizens who hadn't evacuated felt their bones vibrate, their teeth ache, and their souls recognized they were standing at ground zero of an extinction event. Broly stood in a crater of his own making, blood dripping from dozens of wounds, ribs cracked, one arm hanging useless at his side. His power, the infinite rage that had defined his existence, felt small against Frieza's golden aura. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to flee, to survive the way he'd survived his father's control and Vampa's hellscape. But Superman's words echoed in his mind. "You're stronger than this, not because your power level is higher, but because you chose to be more than what he made you." "Is this your choice?" Broly growled at himself, golden eyes fixed on Frieza. "To die standing, or to live knowing you let him win?" Neither option was acceptable. Superman landed beside him, costume shredded, cape torn, but standing, always standing. The Man of Steel's expression carried that impossible determination, the Kansas farm boy who'd stared down gods and never blinked. "Broly, listen to me. We can't beat him with raw power, but we don't have to beat him. We just have to survive long enough for—" "For what?" Broly interrupted. "For more heroes to die? For your world to burn? I know what Frieza does, Superman. He doesn't conquer. He exterminates. Every living thing on this planet will die if I don't stop him." "Then we stop him together," Wonder Woman said, materializing on Broly's other side. Her armor was cracked, divine blood seeping from a gash across her forehead, but her warrior spirit blazed undimmed. "I've fought gods, demons, and titans. This golden tyrant bleeds like any of them." "Barely," the Flash added, vibrating to a stop in the crater's center. "I hit him with the infinite mass punch, the one that usually works on literally everything, and he didn't even bruise. But Wally always told me, if you can't win the fight, change the battlefield." Batman's voice crackled through their comms, ice cold and tactical. "Broly, can you grab Frieza and maintain a grip for 5 seconds?" "I can try," Broly said, his functional arm flexing. "But he's faster than me, stronger, more experienced. What's 5 seconds going to—" "Just do it," Batman interrupted. "Flash, you know the play. Diana, keep Frieza distracted. Clark, you're with me." Before anyone could question the strategy, Frieza's voice cut across the battlefield like a scalpel through flesh. "How touching. The heroes make their final stand. Tell me, do you have any preference for how you'd like to die? I can make it quick, a mercy I rarely extend, or we can take our time. I do so enjoy the screaming." His finger extended, a death beam forming at the tip, compressed energy that could pierce Kryptonian skin, Amazon immortality, and Saiyan endurance with equal ease. The beam lanced out toward Wonder Woman, seeking her heart. She raised her bracers in the classic Amazon guard, divine metal forged by Hephaestus himself, meeting Frieza's death beam.
The collision created a shockwave that shattered every remaining window in Metropolis. Diana's boots carved furrows in concrete as she was pushed back, muscles straining against the force that had destroyed planets. "For Themyscira!" she roared, channeling 3,000 years of warrior fury through her bracers. The death beam deflected skyward, punching a hole through cloud cover and ionosphere. Diana's hands smoked, the bracers glowing cherry red from absorbed heat. Frieza's tail lashed out like a whip, catching Diana across the ribs and sending her tumbling. Before she hit the ground, Superman intercepted, catching his friend and setting her down gently. "I've got her. Broly, now!" Broly launched himself at Frieza with everything he had left. No technique, no strategy, just desperate speed and fading strength. Frieza could have dodged, could have countered, but he was curious what the monkey thought he could accomplish, so he let Broly close the distance. Big mistake. Broly's arms wrapped around Frieza in a bear hug, locking with desperate strength. His broken ribs screamed, his useless arm found function through pure will, and he held on, refusing to let go, even as Frieza's aura burned his skin, even as the Golden Emperor began to power up to vaporize them both. 5 seconds, Broly growled through gritted teeth. "Foolish monkey," Frieza said, amusement coloring his voice. "Do you really think?" The flash hit them at light speed, but he wasn't attacking. He was running around them, around the entire planet, tapping into the speed force with every ounce of his connection. His footsteps created a temporal wake, a bubble of accelerated time that began to envelop Frieza and Broly. 1 second in the bubble became 10 seconds outside. 10 became 100. Time itself bent around the Flash's impossible velocity. "Phantom Zone projector ready." Batman's voice came through the comms. From the ruins of LexCorp, where Lex Luthor watched with calculations already spinning, and Kryptonian device activated. Ancient technology, salvaged from the Fortress of Solitude, designed to banish criminals to a dimension outside normal time-space. The projector fired, its beam striking Frieza and Broly at the exact moment the Flash's temporal bubble reached maximum distortion. For a fraction of a second, reality couldn't decide where they belonged, in Metropolis, in the Phantom Zone, in the Speed Force, or scattered across all three simultaneously. Frieza's golden aura flared in panic as he felt reality slipping away. "No, I will not be banished by primitives. I am Frieza. I am..." Gone. The temporal bubble collapsed. The Phantom Zone projector burned out, circuits fusing from the strain. And when the distortion cleared, both Frieza and Broly had vanished, leaving only scorched concrete and the fading echo of Saiyan rage. Superman's heart dropped. Broly, he was still holding Frieza when he knew. Batman said quietly through the comm. He understood what would happen. It's why he asked for what earlier. He wasn't asking what we were waiting for. He was asking what he'd be sacrificing himself for. And then he did it anyway. The battlefield fell silent. Heroes materialized from every corner of the globe. The entire Justice League, Teen Titans, Young Justice, even mystical heroes like Zatanna and Constantine who'd felt the dimensional disruption. They stood amidst Metropolis's ruins, victory hollow in their mouths. They'd stopped Frieza, but at a cost that sat heavily on everyone's conscience. Wonder Woman approached Superman, placing her hand on his shoulder. He died a warrior's death, fighting for others instead of himself. That's the greatest transformation anyone can achieve. He didn't want transformation, Superman said, his voice raw. He just wanted not to be a weapon anymore, and we used him one anyway. That's on us, on me. The Flash vibrated to a stop beside them. His connection to the Speed Force gave him the perspective the others lacked. Guys, the Phantom Zone isn't death. It's dimensional imprisonment. Time doesn't work right there, but you can survive if you're strong enough, and Broly is nothing if not strong. Batman's tactical mind was already working on the problem. The Phantom Zone projector is destroyed. It'll take months to rebuild. Even then, opening a portal requires knowing exactly where to target, and the zone is infinite. Finding one being in that vastness is impossible. Superman finished, but something in his expression hardened. That Kansas stubbornness that made him refuse to accept impossible as an answer. 2 weeks later, the Fortress of Solitude hummed with activity as Earth's greatest minds worked in concert. Batman coordinated with Cyborg's Motherbox technology. Mr. Terrific brought his unparalleled intellect. Even Lex Luthor, under heavy guard and probation for his role in Frieza's arrival, contributed calculations that made the impossible merely improbable. And Superman stood before a holographic projection of the Phantom Zone, searching. His Kryptonian heritage gave him unique access to the zone's quantum signatures. His hope gave him the will to search every fractured dimension, every temporal pocket. "Clark," Lois Lane said softly, entering the command center with coffee that had long since gone cold. "You've been at this for 60 hours straight. Even you need rest." "He saved Earth," Superman said, his eyes never leaving the projection. "Sacrificed his freedom to stop a threat we couldn't handle. I owe him." The projection flickered, a signal, faint, barely detectable, but unmistakably Saiyan in origin. Superman's heart raced as he locked on to the coordinates, his fingers flying across Kryptonian interfaces. "I've got him. Bruce, are we ready?" Batman stood at the rebuilt Phantom Zone projector, this one designed not to imprison, but
Superman made a decision that would have consequences for years to come. "Victor, open a boom tube. Send him to Oa. The Green Lantern Corps can imprison him properly. Guardian oversight, power dampening cells, the whole treatment." Cyborg hesitated, looking to Batman for confirmation. The Dark Knight nodded once. A boom tube opened and Guardians of Oa materialized, ancient beings who'd witnessed the universe's birth. They took one look at Frieza's broken state and Brawley's scars and understood what had happened. "We will contain him," one Guardian said, their voice resonating with cosmic authority. "The Psi cells on Oa have held worse, but what of the Saiyan?" All eyes turned to Brawley. He stood slowly, every movement calculated, controlled. The berserker who'd crashed through the Watchtower was gone, replaced by something that had been forged in the Phantom Zone's crucible. He'd spent decades fighting the being he feared most and discovered he could win, could always win, would always win. That realization had changed everything. "I'm staying," Brawley said, looking directly at Superman. "On Earth, if you'll have me." Superman's face broke into a genuine smile, the first since Brawley's disappearance. "Welcome home." 6 months later, Metropolis had rebuilt. The scars from Frieza's attack remained, memorial parks where buildings once stood, monuments to the fallen, new building codes accounting for universe-threatening tyrants. But the city endured, as it always did, as it always would. In a modest apartment on the edge of the city, Brawley stood at the window watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. He wore civilian clothes now, jeans and a shirt that Superman had helped him pick out, though they barely contained his massive frame. His reflection showed scars that would never fully heal, golden eyes that still held rage but no longer let it control him. A knock at the door. Brawley opened it to find Superman just floating outside, cape billowing in the evening breeze. "Ready for patrol?" "Always," Brawley said, his aura flickering to life, controlled now, measured, a tool instead of a tyrant. "Where are we going?" "Gotham," Superman said with a slight grimace. "Batman says something is moving in the shadows, something strong enough that he's asking for backup. Figured you'd want in." Brawley's lips quirked, not quite a smile, but close. "Gotham, the Dark City. I've heard the stories. Criminals fear Batman like Saiyans feared Frieza. I want to see if they fear me more." "Brawley," Superman's tone carried a gentle warning. We're heroes now. We don't make people fear us, we give them hope. Hope is for the victims, Brawley countered, launching himself into the air alongside Superman. Fear is for those who prey on victims. I can do both. That's what the Phantom Zone taught me. Power means choosing who gets hope and who gets fear. They flew in comfortable silence towards Gotham's perpetual darkness, two survivors of destroyed worlds, forged through trauma into something the universe had never seen. A Kryptonian who chose humanity, and a Saiyan who chose heroism. Below them, in the rebuilt LexCorp Tower, Lex Luthor watched their flight path on monitors and smiled. Frieza had been a failure, too arrogant, too alien to properly leverage Earth's politics, but he'd proven something valuable. Brawley could be pushed, manipulated, and aimed. The Saiyan thought he'd found peace, but peace was just another prison. Eventually, something would break that control. Some threat would require Brawley to go all out. Some crises would demand that he choose between restraint and survival. And when that moment came, Lex would be ready to push him over the edge, to prove to Superman that godlike power always corrupted, always destroyed, always ended the same way, with cities burning and heroes falling. But that was a scheme for another day. In the skies above Metropolis, Superman and Brawley raced towards Gotham, ready to face whatever darkness waited. Behind them, the setting sun painted the world in colors of ending and beginning, death and rebirth, destruction and hope existing in the same eternal moment. And in the Phantom Zone, where time and space held no meaning, an echo of their battle remained. Saiyan energy and new god technology scarred that dimension in ways that wouldn't be understood for generations. Seeds planted in void, waiting for the right moment to bloom into new threats or new heroes. The DC Universe gained a legend, the Saiyan who crashed from heaven, fought a god, banished to hell, and returned stronger. Stories would be told in Justice League archives, whispered in villain hideouts, referenced in alternate timelines and parallel dimensions. The Green Storm, the Emerald Titan, the legendary hero, Brawley. In deep space, Darkseid watched Earth through Omega-enhanced sensors, his stone face expressionless. The Saiyan had grown stronger in the Phantom Zone. Good. Strong warriors make for better challenges, and Apocalypse would face Earth again. But next time, Darkseid would come prepared. Next time, he'd break the monkey and the Kryptonian simultaneously. Next time, there would be no escape, no hope, only the anti-life equation's cold embrace. But that confrontation waited in uncertain futures, across timelines that shifted with every choice, every battle, every moment of hope defeating despair. For now, Earth had its newest protector, a Saiyan learning that power could be built instead of destroyed, that rage could be channeled into protection. The greatest strength wasn't infinite power, but the choice to use it wisely. Superman and Brawley descended into Gotham's shadows, where Batman waited with reports of something impossible stirring in Arkham Asylum, something that knew about the Phantom Zone breach, something that wanted to test Earth's newest hero. The Dark Knight looked up as they landed on his rooftop, his cowl hiding any expression, but his voice carried grudging approval. "You're late." "Traffic," Superman said with a slight smile. "Excuses," Batman countered, already moving towards the Batmobile. "The target is in Arkham, high security wing. Whatever it is, it arrived 3 days ago through a dimensional rift similar to the one that brought Brawley here. Guards describe it as, let me guess, strong, dangerous, interested in fighting the strongest warriors it can find." "How did you know?" Batman's detective instincts are immediately suspicious. "Because that's what I would do. If I came to a new universe looking for purpose, I'd find the strongest fighters and test myself. Except I'm already here, which means whoever this is, they're looking for me specifically." The three heroes exchanged glances, Superman's concern,
Batman's calculation, Brawley's anticipation. Another warrior from another universe drawn by the dimensional scars Brawley had created. The first of potentially dozens, hundreds, thousands drawn to Earth by the growing reputation of its heroes and the weakening barriers between realities. "Then let's go introduce ourselves," Superman said, lifting into the air, "and show them what Earth's heroes are made of." Batman entered the Batmobile, engines roaring to life. "I hope you're ready for this, Brawley, because if warriors keep coming through looking for you, Earth becomes the arena for every universe-level threat that wants to test their strength." Brawley's aura ignited, emerald energy painting Gotham's shadows green for just a moment before he controlled it, suppressed it, channeled it into readiness instead of rage. "Good. I've spent my whole life running from fights or being forced into them. Now I get to choose my battles, choose to protect instead of destroy, choose to stand with heroes instead of serving tyrants." He looked at Superman and Batman, the symbol of hope and the master of fear, the light and the darkness, the dual nature of heroism itself. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." As they raced towards Arkham Asylum and whatever dimensional refugee waited there, Metropolis's lights blazed behind them. Millions of lives saved because one Saiyan chose heroism over rage, sacrifice over survival, hope over despair. The multiverse would send more threats, more warriors, more gods and monsters seeking Earth's heroes. Let them come. The Justice League had faced apocalypses before and would face them again, but now they had something they'd never had before: infinite power that chose restraint, legendary strength that chose wisdom. A Saiyan who learned that the greatest victory wasn't defeating your enemies, but defeating the rage that made you a weapon instead of a hero. Brawley had crashed into the Watchtower as a destroyer. He'd left the Phantom Zone as something more, and he would face whatever came next, not as a berserker, not as a weapon, not as a monster, but as a hero who earned his place among Earth's finest.